Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be presenting on the topic of school and family relationships. And I'm going to be talking about what these relationships look like in a practical sense and how they can benefit our students. So I wanted to start this presentation with some questions to kind of get you thinking about how this topic might relate to you in your current teaching context. So I asked three questions here, and I would invite you to pause the video for a moment and consider these questions. I said, what are some ways that you have actively involved families in your classroom this year? What methods of communication do you most frequently utilize in your classroom? And how often would you say that you communicate with your students' families? And so I would invite you to take a minute to either just think about these in your head or to write down your answers to these questions so that you can be thinking about them as we go through some of this information. So, just a little bit of background on this topic. In a research article by Cardona, Jane, and Canfield Davis, they noted that the foundation of children's development and learning depends upon the intercontextual nature of relationships between families and schools. And this idea is based on the research done by theorist Yuri Bronfenbrenner and his theory of overlapping spheres of influence. And this was also referenced in the 2019 text by Epstein. And in the little graphic here, I made a graphic to show how these spheres of influence, the different places that impact the student, should overlap. And so I have listed school, such as teachers, their friends, academics, and the material they're learning should overlap with their home life, their family members, their background, their culture, different things like that, and how really those things should come together in a way that benefits the student in their learning. And it's important to note that the students are also crucial partners for this to be successful. So it needs to be, a three-way partnership between the school, the student's family, and the student themselves. And this can happen on an institutional level, meaning that, school-wide, connecting with all of the families together that are involved in the school community. And also on an individual level, meeting with individual families and, talking about their specific student and their needs and strengths. So there are a lot of different types and examples of the way these interactions can happen, and I found a way to group them into three major categories: getting to know families, involving families in the learning at school, and involving families in the learning at home. So getting to know families, some examples are holding orientation nights so that you can start the year off by meeting the families, becoming familiar with them, and having them become familiar with you. It's also important to provide families with surveys so that you can get to know some information about them. These can include questions that are about their students and about their expectations and goals for the school year, but also asking families about their own special talents or their careers or special skills they have or the available time that they have, throughout a week, so that you can start to plan maybe some ways that the parents can come and share their knowledge with the students or be involved in the classroom in different ways. And it's also important to hold events where families are not only socializing with teachers, but socializing with one another, so that they can continue to be involved in the classroom and also have the students be involved in each other's lives outside of school. It really just helps to create, one big classroom community where everyone has a relationship. Another aspect is involving families in the school. This can look like inviting families to class events, such as class parties, or allowing families to come in and help with centers or to lead an activity. And this can happen on on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, however often you are able to include families in your classroom. This could also look like holding school-wide events on a more institutional level, such as book fairs, literacy nights, career days, open houses, anything that gets the students and their families into the building, learning together and interacting with the school community. And also on a more individual level, this would look like inviting families in for meetings and conferences to talk about the specific students. It's also important to remember that we need to involve families in the learning at home, because in order for those spheres to overlap each other, not only do families need to come into the school, but the learning has to go into the home as well. So it's important to remember to provide families with strategies to continue learning at home. It's really important because, some families may understand the curriculum but aren't sure of what the best strategies would be for helping their students, practice the learning at home. So this, along with this, would be assigning homework that asks students to interact with their families. And one example of this is TIPS homework, which was referenced in the Epstein 2019 text, which is just one example of homework that asks students to sit down and work with their families and learn together. Another way to involve families at home is by sending out newsletters so that parents are updated on what the students are learning in school each week or each month so that they know what to continue working on at home. So through all these interactions, the actual communication that occurs is extremely crucial. And there are a lot of different methods to communicating with families and a variety of strategies to help make that successful. So some methods of communication, are include but aren't limited to conferences, either in person or virtual, newsletters on any given frequency, phone calls home, emails, and even social media can be used to keep families updated on what's going on in the classroom and when events are going on. And through all these, types of communication, there are many aspects that need to be present in order to make it successful. In the research that I mentioned before by Cardona, Jane, and Canfield Davis, they noted that parents found three different, types of positive attitudes that they felt signified a successful relationship between them and the teachers. The first one was social respect, meaning that they treated the families as an equal partner in the students' learning. Personal regard meant that the teachers showed an interest and a care for the family's current situations, what their needs might be, what resources they might be lacking, and helped provide them with those things. And perceived competence meant that the teachers, saw the families as capable of understanding the material, understanding what was going on in school, and being able to be an active participant in what was going on. It's also important to remember to use effective questioning techniques when you're communicating with somebody, providing opportunities for clear, direct, and open-ended discussion. And this communication should occur as frequently as you possibly can. In the research by Cardona, Jane, and Canfield Davis, they found that parents really wanted more communication than they were already getting. So it's important to make sure it's frequent and they're utilizing as many methods as possible. So there are a lot of benefits to successful school and family relationships, and these benefits can happen both for the students and for their families. So some benefits on the families that were found in the research were an increased sense of confidence in the teacher's ability to teach their child. So if the parents felt that the teachers wanted a relationship with them, they felt better about, leaving their education in with the teacher at school. They also had an increased desire to be more involved if they felt that the school was more willing to, work with them and include them in the learning. And they also had an increased desire to continue the students' education at home. If they felt the teacher trusted them and they had all those relational trust concepts were met in their relationship with the teacher, they felt more willing to work on, the learning at home and to keep it going. And this quote here says, families are more willing to be involved in school and give their time, even if their working schedules were busy, when teachers demonstrated all of the relational trust concepts in their professional relationship. There also are obviously a lot of benefits of these relationships on the students. The research by Topor, Keene, Shelton, and Calkins in 2010 found a lot of benefits on students, such as increased self-confidence among the students. If the students knew that their parents or their families and their teachers had a good relationship, they had more self-confidence in their own abilities to succeed in school. They also saw more increased academic achievement levels, both on standardized testing and also, smaller teacher-made assessments. Those students exhibited a more positive attitude towards learning and were more willing to be engaged in school. And when a family had a strong relationship with the teacher, the student and the teacher in turn also had a stronger relationship and a closer bond, which only helped the students succeed more in school. So now that we've talked about what some of the research shows and given some examples of what this might look like in the classroom, it's important to take the time to think about how this affects us in our practice. It's important to take the time to always reflect on the ways which you and your own classroom and your school as a whole on an institutional level collaborate with families. It's important to, along with this, to set goals for yourself. So I included a challenge here to set a goal for yourself to increase your frequency of different methods of communication. So maybe try this week to see if you can come up with one method of communication that you don't usually use and try to utilize that in some way. Reach out to your students' families in a way that you haven't done before. And continue to reflect on this and see how this new communication method is working and continue to increase the frequency or try to do a new method of communication so that you're reaching out in as many ways as possible. And then, as always, be sure to frequently assess your current practices of collaborating in order to improve them over time. every practice has the ability to improve. So it's important to always be reflecting on what we're doing.
And here's just a list of the references that I referred to throughout this presentation, so that if you would like to dive more deeply into any of the information, all of the articles are listed right here for you. Thank you for watching.